predator no one here asked for. A law written 1,000 miles away. Urban voters imposing on rural communities.
Out of more than 60 counties, 13 counties made the decision.
By the way, we're going to put this entire impact on the backs of one county.
It is time to delist the wolf, in particular to save the Endangered Species Act.
You couldn't have driven a bigger wedge in the urban-rural divide than wolves.
And ranchers caught in the middle.
They've been cattle killing, sheep killing, and in Oregon, they were llama killing wolves.
On average, an adult gray wolf will kill 2 large animals a month. So you start thinking about if you have 100 gray wolves, they're killing 200 of something every single month. They're either killing livestock, they're killing sheep, they're killing dogs, they're killing cows. They are killing our moose, our elk, our deer, our critters.
This is the untold story of the people living with Colorado's wolf experiment.
Last year, gray wolves killed 3 of Don's herd in 1 month.
24. That's how many sheep and cows Colorado Parks and Wildlife says wolves have killed so far this year.
Last winter, 7 of his cattle were killed by wolves.
We got a dead calf, wolf prints everywhere.
CPW confirmed it was the 3rd case of wolf depredation since the wolves were released last December.
White River National Forest, that's up near Meeker, 18 calves weighing about 600 pounds each were found dead earlier this month.
Colorado Parks and Wildlife report 26 livestock involved in confirmed wolf depredations this year.
Colorado Parks and Wildlife believes the wolf or wolves involved are part of the 10 reintroduced to Colorado in December.
They are a real threat to livestock.
Feel helpless to stop them.
They are only left to wonder who's next.
This crisis stems from Proposition 114.
So the debate over reintroducing gray wolves in Colorado is heating up. Voters will decide at the ballot box in November.
Proposition 114, controversial reintroduction program.
It was an incredibly tight vote on the ballot measure.
It's going to come down to the wire.
The yeses and nos separated by fewer than 30,000 votes.
In November 2020, Colorado voted to reintroduce wolves. The ballot measure won by less than 2%.
Narrowly approved in November 2020 by less than 2% of voters.
Every vote matters, and this was one of the tightest races within the 2020 election.
Also highlighting the divide on this issue between urban and rural voters.
The vote exposed Colorado's deep urban-rural rift. Rural areas overwhelmingly opposed it, yet bore the brunt.
Out of the 64 counties in the state, 13 of them voted in favor of Prop 114. 5 of those counties were on the west slope of Colorado.
And these little green circles you're looking at, well, that's the metro areas that voted yes. But consider this, across this line, over right about here, that is the no zone, and that is where wolves will be released.
So you had your front range voters and the majority of the population that drove this decision, and the vast majority of the west slope that was going to be the reintroduction site voted no.
It shows much of that support came from east of the Continental Divide. Just 13 of the state's 64 counties approved the measure, and all but 5 are completely or mostly east of the divide.
But because of those city centers, because of that high population density, the wolves are here.
As one advocate explains,
east slope directed, west slope affected. You couldn't have driven a bigger wedge in the urban-rural divide than wolves.
At its core, Prop 114 embodied ballot box biology.
It is about a moment in our history where voters can actually have a say in what is going on in our society.
A term derided by experts as the worst way to manage your wildlife resource.
It was forced on Colorado by ballot box biology, as I said. We have a governor that
is insistent on doing this.
This ballot box biology has led Colorado to rush through the importation of the Canadian gray wolves and has set them loose in our state despite numerous protests and questions about the legality and dysfunctional and chaotic approach to prioritizing predators over people.
Traditionally, wildlife decisions in Colorado were left to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission and scientists, guided by data and stakeholder input.
Wolves have always been an interesting topic in Colorado. Our neighbors to the north in Wyoming, once their wolf reintroduction happened, we knew it was inevitable that wolves would find their way to Colorado. The CPW Commission and legislatures up to that point had decided, hey, if they come, fantastic. We won't do anything. We'll let them naturally repopulate the state. We'll manage them accordingly. But there's no reason to do a reintroduction because they will make their way here. And evidence was showing that they were doing just that.
But activists, frustrated by the slow, natural migration of wolves from neighboring states, pushed the issue to the ballot, forcing a rushed reintroduction.
The citizens' petition wanted to rush that natural progression and force the reintroduction onto Colorado and onto the western slope of Colorado through the citizens' petition process.
Letting the voters decide on wildlife issues in this state is the worst thing you can do. And that's what we ended up with Prop 114.
We as an agency did a lot of forework preparing for this very big reintroduction. All of that planning went out the window for the most part the minute Governor Polis decided he wanted to see wolves and be the first one to release a wolf into Colorado.
Politics trumped science, with Governor Polis pushing aggressively. The measure called for reintroducing gray wolves west of the Continental Divide by the end of 2023, promising to restore ecological balance while providing fair compensation for any livestock losses. Proponents painted a romantic picture: wolves roaming vast public lands, revitalizing ecosystems.
Bottom line, it's debatable whether the state needs to or even whether it will be allowed to relocate and manage gray wolves here, let alone what the impact of that will be. Colorado is different from Yellowstone. What we do know is it won't be cheap. So the question is really one of priorities.
Voters were sold a vision that quickly unraveled.
That's right. Proposition 114 is all about the reintroduction and management of gray wolves in the state.
If passed, gray wolves would be reintroduced on land west of the Continental Divide by the end of 2023.
This is how proponents of Proposition 114 characterized the release area.
17 million acres of public lands here in Colorado.
Characterized by millions and millions and millions of acres of public land. Huge.
70% of Western Colorado belongs to us all as public land.
And I refuse to believe that there isn't enough space for all of us to coexist together.
With many areas of the state ruled out, the wolf release zones were nothing like the picture painted by Proposition 114 proponents.
Law says wolves must be released west of the Continental Divide. The release will happen at least 60 miles from another state or tribe, and the release cannot happen on federal land. With those limitations,
the actual release area shrank to about 2% of Colorado, concentrated in a golden triangle of Garfield, Pitkin, and Eagle counties.
I believe that the voters were extremely misled in Proposition 114. What was put to the voters was all of the land west of the Continental Divide. So basically, a little more than a third of the entire state of Colorado was what the voters looked at in terms of a release zone, when in reality, it was 2% of the state of Colorado. None of that analysis had been done, or at least presented to the voters to say, hey, just so you understand, the entire state gets to vote. The entire state gets to vote on this issue. And by the way, we're going to put this entire impact on the backs of one county out of 64 counties.
What that ended up doing was shrinking the available land mass to about 2% of the Colorado landscape that these wolves could be relocated on.
I believe that the voters would not have been okay with that. When they first visited with us to the meeting you just spoke about, they said, yes, we only have right now the authority or the willingness to release them on state lands, state-owned lands, which are very, very few of in Garfield County. In fact, there's only 2 places And for various environmental reasons, they really didn't work out well. And so that left them just with private land.
I think the governor wanted to rush the reintroduction and get paws on the ground, and he wanted to get it, by the end of December in 23.
Releasing gray wolves on federal lands demands a rigorous process. It's called NEPA. The National Environmental Policy Act requires detailed environmental reviews. These ensure balanced wildlife management. The process can take up to 2 years. That's a heavy lift. Colorado chose a faster path. This left ranchers to bear the cost.
In terms of the federal ground, there's plenty of federal ground. In Garfield County, we've got 2,000 square miles of federal ground, right? It's 2/3 of our county. A lot of space in those areas. But that would also require going through a federal environmental review process. Something of this nature, to me, deserves and demands that kind of environmental review, which is what, NEPA is all about. And the drive by the governor's office was, that's going to take us too long. We want to get the wolves on the ground. And that didn't fit with the timeline that the governor wanted to push. He wanted to push it much more aggressively, and sort of NEPA be damned, and here we are.
Governor Polis's heavy hands steered the program, rushing releases to avoid federal reviews and overriding agency plans. This top-down interference created chaos, as insiders attest.
The political interference has been the whole gist of this whole wolf reintroduction, really. A lot of top-down, and that's causing the issues.
We've seen evidence of his interference at commission meetings, whether that's through text messages or through, other means of communication. You see the commission start going one way, and then all of a sudden we take a right-hand turn. There's something driving that decision-making, the day-to-day operations of a decision-making process that should be left to a director, that should be left to the experts, that they've spent their entire careers doing this. And the governor's handprint is in every single decision, so much so that communications can't go out from the agency without his approval.
The person that it falls on and the person who has to make the decision is Jared Polis. It all comes down to him.
Governor Polis pushed hard for wolf reintroduction. He skipped federal public lands to avoid NEPA's environmental reviews. Wolves landed in ranchers' backyards. The human and economic toll has been profound.
When voters approved wolf reintroduction in Colorado, they were told it would cost about $800,000. Parks and Wildlife told lawmakers today it spent about $3 million to relocate 30 wolves over 2 years. 5 of them haven't survived. Ranchers say not only is the cost of the program out of control, the management of it, they say, is off the rails.
Voters were promised vast public lands for releases, fair compensation, and conflict prevention tools. Instead, the area shrank to 2% of the state on private ranch land, with skyrocketing costs and minimal aid.
And it's not what the people voted on.
To me, that's a broken promise to the voters. They were misled, they were hoodwinked, in my opinion.
Prop 114 promised fair compensation, up to $15,000 per animal.
The compensation is very generous. So I honestly don't believe that ranchers are going to be economically damaged by the presence of wolves, even if they do lose some animals.
There's a difference between reimbursement and compensation. And neither Brad and I have gotten reimbursed one dime for anything that we've lost or what our cattle have gone through and what we don't know what we're gonna see when they come home in the fall time.
These are the direct blows. Livestock lost, herds crippled. But the pain runs deeper.
And this whole notion that you're going to be compensated in these groups out there, people who think that this is such a big windfall for us is completely ridiculous, because you don't get compensated for anything. It's like the first heifers that I lost. Those were high dollar heifers that I've been buying genetically from this guy for years. That's stuff that we try to put back into that herd that's now completely gone, and nobody's paying me for my time, the feed, the potential of what the loss of that thing was going to get me. These heifers are potentially something I'm going to keep a bull out of. And if not a bull, for sure a heifer out of, that would be in my herd for another 10, 12, 13 years. There is no compensation. Whether we get reimbursed at the end of the day is to be seen.
When you lose one of those cows to a wolf kill, that's not just that cow that you lose every calf that that cow may have had for the next 12 seasons. So the cost is pretty high to the rancher because that is never compensated for.
Funds dry up fast.
With the compensation program, right away, the first 2 claims was over what we set.
Claims bogged down in bureaucracy.
First, the rancher has to prove that it was the wolf that killed their animal, and that's actually pretty difficult to do. If they don't find the animal within a couple days, then it's already decayed, and unless they can show actual bite marks that make it very clear that the wolf had killed it, even though all the evidence would point to that and everybody with common sense would say, obviously, this is a wolf kill, unless they can definitively prove that that wolf has killed their animal, they're not going to be compensated for that.
Worse, CPW investigations often fall short, calling kills inconclusive to dodge payouts.
Where I think I'm at, Mike, which is, I don't like it, you're not going to like it, is that everybody's telling me I have to call it inconclusive. And if I don't call it inconclusive, they're going to argue with me. So unless you have, so I will submit my report and it will say inconclusive. You can file your claim and you can submit all your evidence.
Ray, I know how all the rest of that works because we're in denial right now of our second so-called deprivation. So you don't have to explain all that to me, but
okay.
I just have one question was the animal eaten alive?
Yes, we believe it was killed.
Okay, I mean, as far as it was killed and eaten while it was still alive, and then it, of course, died off, but yes.
The indirect costs of gray wolf reintroduction often surpass direct livestock losses.
A UC Davis study found that cattle exposed to wolves have issues with eating, lactating, nursing calf, and pregnancy, which saw devastating repercussions.
A UC Davis study estimates indirect losses between $1.4 to $3.4 million yearly, as their impact is ongoing and systemic, not just tied to isolated attacks. Wolves trigger chronic stress in livestock, raising cortisol levels by up to 37%, cutting grazing time, reducing estrus cycles, suppressing fertility, and slowing weight gain. Calves wean 18 to 22 pounds lighter, slashing market value and herd productivity. Genetic potential in breeding stock erodes. Wolves, or other animals, may consume carcasses, making some deaths hard to confirm, leading to uncompensated, missing animals.
It's a very vicious animal. It actually eats the entire animal, from hide to bones, all of it.
The ripple effects hit hard. Disrupted supply chains, declining hunting revenue, job losses, and falling land values strain rural communities.
So now a lot of people and a lot of advocates saying, well, that's too much, we're paying out too much, and they want to change it. Well, that's in the law, and that was in what they voted on was in the working group, and all the work they done was to fairly compensate landowners for their losses. And now they're trying to backpedal on that.
Ranchers patrol sleepless nights, blood pressure soaring, families strained.
It's very real, the stress that it puts on families. And in my situation, I have a wonderful wife, but when she says, I didn't sign up for this, and this is your life, those are the conversations that we have. And, this wolf deal, it's everything you do revolves around this one thing.
The emotional toll? Heartbreak, watching mothers nuzzle dead calves. Psychological scars linger, edgy nerves, endless worry.
I have pictures of my cows that I'm feeding in the wintertime with wolf tracks where the wolves you can see are like rolling in the snow. 2 heifers, 6 calves, cow and calf attacked, and then who knows, right?
Ranchers fight for scraps while wolves roam free.
I don't care if it's $350,000, $3 million, or $30 million. It needs to come out of the general fund. The public voted for this. They can pay for compensation. We need to get this wolf thing resolved, not mitigated. And the compensation is mitigation, not getting it solved. We need to work at it from a more unified effort from the front end.
The Copper Creek Pack exposes CPW's failed wolf plan. Brought from Oregon, they were known livestock killers. They struck in Grand County, killing calves.
Denver 7 has covered extensively the issues Grand County experienced with the Copper Creek Pack.
They were captured last year after being connected to a string of depredations. That's when wolves are responsible for killing livestock or domestic animals.
Now a similar story is unfolding in Pitkin County,
which breaks every management plan, everything in the management plan to release known depredating wolves. In January, in the middle of a bunch of cows with about 20 head of elk around, with the wolves that came from up there that everybody knew was cow killers.
Governor Polis took a known wolf pack, known to kill livestock, moved him into Colorado, and they decimated the ranchers in the area that they were first introduced into. And then when it got too hot for them there, and they were either going to have to do something drastic, such as euthanize them, instead of doing that, they moved them into Pitkin County between the two largest livestock owners in the county.
They were killing cattle, sheep in Oregon, and Colorado had no problem taking these things, and they knew it. And then they dropped them off up in Middle Park, and what did they do? They killed sheep and cattle. And
Shocking.
And they boxed them up and released them here. And all we're told is we're trying to change behavior, and we had no idea that by dropping them back off here that they wouldn't move away from cattle.
They did not give the landowners notice that they were going to be doing that. The ranchers found out about it as they started hearing the wolf howl at night, and they'd see wolf tracks, and they'd see their herds, their livestock had been run to death, and they start missing cattle. That's how they learned that the governor had planted the wolf between their operations.
The Colorado Wolf Restoration and Management Plan says that moving depredating wolves to a different part of the state will not be considered, since it's viewed as moving the problem along with the wolves.
First it started in Grand County, nothing but conflict issues, and then they re-released the Copper Creek Pack up in Pitkin County, and we're receiving all kinds of issues and conflicts with livestock producers in Pitkin County.
The Endangered Species Act was meant to save animals at risk of disappearing. Instead, it's become a harsh rule that hurts landowners who take care of the land these animals need.
They did it really as an experiment to see if the federal government could help species in peril better than private industry.
By design, this hands the federal government huge power to control land and businesses.
With all of the immense resources and regulatory powers that they have had, they've actually shown that it's been a failure.
For 50 years, this law has put tough limits on property owners, causing businesses and local economies to struggle.
It is projected that the housing industry will lose $14.7 billion over the next 10 years as a result of the Endangered Species Act, and that's just one industry.
Under the Endangered Species Act, there is no accountability for the damages done to landowners.
The Colorado wolf story is a perfect example of how that happens. The radical environmentalists that drive these agendas, like Governor Polis, they're not the ones that are going to have to pay for the loss of cattle. They're not going to be the ones lose their livelihood as a result. There's no accountability for the actual damage that occurs to the landowners, and it's a huge injustice.
Despite its admirable goal of safeguarding wildlife, the Endangered Species Act has consistently fallen short, proving both inefficient and ineffective in driving species recovery.
When a species is recovered, it needs to come off the list.
We can point to the low number of delisted species as evidence of the law's failure.
Advocates of the Endangered Species Act claim that they have recovered 62 species after 50 years of protection under the Endangered Species Act. About 1,667 species have been protected, and out of those, only 62 species do the Fish and Wildlife Service claim they have recovered. But it's worse than that, because 36 of those species actually should have never been listed to begin with.
Recovery is rare.
Even when you do have the science that shows the species should not be listed, if the agency wants to keep them on the list for whatever reason, it's very difficult to get them removed.
And here's the thing. When a species gets added to the Endangered Species Act list, it often stays there forever, even if it's doing fine or was listed by mistake.
And that's the Endangered Species Act. You may enter, but you may never leave.
So one of the core problems with the Endangered Species Act is that species get on the list and they're federally protected that don't warrant that protection. They do things like list distinct population segments and subspecies where, because they aren't able to show that the actual species is in peril, then they break them down into these little categories so that they can get them listed. And then when they do, they can control and wipe out entire industries.
To justify listings that target specific areas or industries, turning the ESA into a perpetual control mechanism.
So again, what you have is you have radical environmental groups and activist judges that they use the Endangered Species Act as a zoning and land use power tool, rather than just focusing on whether the species themselves have actually recovered and are no longer in danger of becoming extinct.
This misuse threatens our food supply, devastating agriculture by restricting water, grazing, and land use, prioritizing one species over balanced ecosystems, leading to shortages and higher costs for essentials.
We have breaking news.
Happening now, massive wildfires.
This morning, a frightening scene.
More than 30 uncontained large wildfires.
Up in Oregon.
In Utah, at the Grand Canyon.
Wildfires rage in California.
Destroying homes. The greatest toll on human lives from fires.
Forcing thousands to flee.
Grown to more than 100,000 acres.
There is no doubt that wildfires are intensifying across our landscapes.
We're burning millions of acres every year. You can trace a lot of this back to the misuse, the abuse of the Endangered Species Act to stop and block the type of work we need to be doing.
Driven by decades of poor forest management and restrictive grazing policies under the Endangered Species Act, these barriers prevent essential fuel reduction, allowing grasslands and forests to become tinderboxes primed for catastrophic fires that endanger communities, wildlife, and our natural heritage.
When you're not able to graze them at the proper time, you create a condition where grassland fires are going to be something that you now have to start worrying about. You know, we saw this in the Panhandle in Texas, where there's lesser prairie chicken habitat up there. There's a lot of protected conservation areas where livestock aren't allowed to graze that area. And we've seen a massive fire come through the Panhandle that wiped out entire operations.
So what is the solution on this? Just watch these ghost trees stay there, watch the brush grow up around all this and become the next tinderbox for the next fire in 5 or 7 years? That seems to be the solution by those on the far left that use the Endangered Species Act as a weapon to stop progress for people, as well as nature, as well as the environment.
Ultimately, the ESA has become a zoning mechanism, secondary to saving species and primary to controlling land and water through endless protections, litigation, and habitat designations that override property rights and stifle industries.
These large environmental groups, NGOs, they will come in with a endangered species issue and they will attack oil and gas leases or the use of those lands for recreation or for hunting.
Listen closely to their own words.
The Endangered Species Act is the most powerful, successful environmental law in the world. No compromising law.
And they make no apologies. It is their most powerful weapon against ranchers, farmers, logging, housing, and energy industries, the very engines of human flourishing.
We can sue developers, we can sue the state to ensure that the Endangered Species Act is used.
NGOs file lawsuits over vague listings, tying up land use for years. Ranchers and farmers face endless restrictions, can't irrigate, build, or graze without federal red tape.
NRDC has been litigating cases, suing since its founding in 1970. It's part of the DNA of NRDC. There is no place in this country where we have not sued and triumphed.
The Fish and Wildlife Service has tried to delist the gray wolf in certain states before and was met with a bunch of lawsuits from conservationists and environmental groups.
And so we go out and we stop the logging.
We litigate under the full range of environmental laws, the Endangered Species Act. We're going to meet them in court, we're going to sue them, and we're going to prevail.
The good news is Because that law is so well written, it's so specific, it's so strong, the Center for Biological Diversity can haul Trump into court, and we're going to stop him.
What these environmental groups and NGOs have done is this is the sole source of their revenue. This is the sole source of their income. They file a lawsuit, and they especially file these lawsuits when they have a friendly administration, such as the Biden administration. It's called sue and settle. So they'll sue them, and then the administration immediately or shortly thereafter settles, and part of that settlement is they can get $300, $500, $700, $800 an hour for their attorney's fees. That's how they generate revenue. That's how they continue to go. So basically, it's kind of a money laundering operation.
The Endangered Species Act was signed in 1973 to prevent extinction and recover threatened wildlife. Over time, many environmental organizations have weaponized its provisions, especially the broad definition of harm through habitat modification and the citizen suit provision, to challenge land use on a scale the law's authors did not anticipate. To these groups, any development that alters habitat, even if it supports human communities, represents a direct threat to species that must be stopped. The result: a conservation statute now routinely functions as a regulatory barrier to housing, agriculture, energy, and infrastructure, prioritizing ecological stasis over human needs.
The usage of the Endangered Species Act as a weapon has devastated so much of agriculture in California, which maybe people don't realize that 90% of certain types of crops, the vegetable crops that the United States people use, come from California. Most of the almonds that you would use come from California. Where's this going to come from if California's out of business because of the misuse and abuse of the Endangered Species Act?
We just need to come to grips with that the Endangered Species Act doesn't work, and the cost of continuing this experiment is too high. And it's not being borne by the environmental community that is pushing for the Endangered Species Act. It's being borne by America's landowners that are providing our food and other resources. That's who is bearing the cost of the Endangered Species Act.
We must lift the heavy burden on landowners. First, we should delist species after 10 years, requiring a new public process to continue federal protection. Second, agencies should be prevented from dividing species into small populations that will never meet political recovery goals. Third, protections for species should be imposed on federal lands before restricting state and private land. Fourth, apex predators, like wolves, should be managed through state hunting programs. And finally, agencies should stop penalizing the Americans who faithfully steward the land and animals. Congress can make these changes and turn a law that doesn't work and requires no accountability into a law that protects property rights and the species it was designed to help.